Speaking of good time, my question is, when did you first fall in love with wrestling, Sarah?
So I remember the exact moment. So I knew about wrestling before. I knew about Hulk Hogan and everything because when we were little kids, they'd make me play Miss Elizabeth and I'd be like hanging out waiting for the winner. Yeah, it was weird. I won't get all into it, but it was definitely some stuff that should not have been happening for a 5-year-old. Anyway, but I was going through channels and I loved Xena growing up. Big surprise for anyone who knows me. And I see a girl in fake leather. So I assume, oh, an Amazon, this must be Xena. Like one of the Amazons for Xena, it was China. And the camera pulls back and she's standing in a ring. And I was like, who is this? Because to my knowledge, wrestling had been guys. And like, yeah, it was like, okay, they were cool. But like women wrestling, my mind was blown. And so I started watching then. And that was the time where we had China, we had Luna Vachon, we had Miss Jacqueline. So it was this time where there were all these women to love and they only got a few minutes. So I'd like frantically be waiting for their time to get on. And, I fell so deeply in love with it. I created a character for myself. She was Queen Bee. She was Bumblebee themed and she was a rapper.
All right. The excitement, I can tell. I could really feel the love, the moment you fell in love with wrestling. But for me, it was because it's been in and out of my life. Like every Sundays, because I don't want to just put this on Black people, but we couldn't afford pay-per-view, so
right. I never watched a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I never watched a pay-per-view until like now. But we used to watch wrestling every Sunday, eat popcorn, and like just fall asleep. Like that was our Sundays, my brother, myself, and my dad. And then again, fast forward in college, we used to have a wrestling night, but I don't really recall actually like I just remember it being in the background, but it was like me and a bunch of track athletes. Like I was actually in a house with 5 other guys. Those were my roommates, so you can imagine. So that we had like a wrestling night, but I genuinely fell in love with wrestling and truly appreciated wrestling when I think I had told this story on Xpot. So Austin Creed and I, or Xavier Woods, I met him when I was doing TV in Toronto, and we stayed friends this whole time. He was with TNT at the time, had no idea he signed to WWE, none of that. And then one day he happened to be in LA. He hit me up, we hung out, and he's like, yeah, I'm with WWE now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, okay. And then he gave me tickets to a show, and just seeing everybody, just seeing the movement in the ring, one, not killing yourself and killing other people, and then telling the story. That's when I really fell in love. Again, I'm going to make this into a drinking game. Maybe our next watch along. I fell in love with the storyline. The storyline is just like everything for me. And then the athleticism, because the general rule, when you talk to people who don't follow wrestling, it's like, oh, the first question they get is like, oh, well, wrestling's, fake and stuff like that. And it's like, no. There's a lot going on. And I challenge anybody, athlete or not, to go into that and then do so many different things in that ring in, that few minutes and make it look good. And now you add cameras. That's a whole situation right there.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you say that, because so I fell out of love with wrestling. I was hitting puberty, and one of the announcers, Jerry the King Lawler, would always be like, puppies, puppies, and talk about the women like they were literally just titties with legs. It was really gross. It was really disgusting. And, I'm hitting puberty, so I'm already feeling weird about my body. And then here's this man who won't treat these women like competitors. He treats them like they're there for his own sexual enjoyment. Literally go back and listen. When you watch on the network or Peacock, he talks like he's a 13-year-old boy. And I have a whole theory that this actually influenced some of the bad, society things that happened from those 13-year-old boys who grew up. But anyway, that's like a whole podcast in itself. But it made me feel so horrible and angry and mad. And then one day I said, why am I watching this thing that makes me mad? So I stopped watching wrestling. And then, like you, had little wrestling nights in college, but I wasn't really paying attention. But it was not until Xavier Woods gave me tickets to a show that I fell back in love with wrestling. I know. I'm like, it's really hilarious.
Changing lives.
We've known each other for like 3 years, and we didn't know that we both had that in common. So that's really funny.
Well, shout out to Xavier for giving tickets, like
making the love real.
I know, right? But yeah, that is so crazy because we both knew him, but not the
connection. Yeah, no, that's so funny. I met him at a not wrestling event at E3, and then he gave me my co-host tickets, my old co-host for my other podcast, and yeah, the rest is history.
That might have been. We have to cross the years.
I'm wondering if it was the same year. Was it in Anaheim?
Staples Center. Staples Center.
Okay, then it wasn't the same. Yeah, I was in Anaheim.
Yeah, it was definitely Staples because I would have never driven to Anaheim.
We did.
Yeah, Xavier and I weren't super homies back then. It was just like, oh, okay, that's cool. But like he was relatively like, oh, okay, like we can do lunch in Staples Center because it's like 10 minutes away. Too much information for you guys. It's a whole nother podcast. But not that way, but you guys don't care about that stuff. But that's
let's talk about networking in Los Angeles, everyone.
I know, right?